2024 will see the first big-time incursion of the Fox X-Men universe characters into the MCU. We've certainly seen snippets of it. You know, we saw Patrick Stewart as one of the Illuminati in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. We did get the little X-Men jingle in the Miss Marvel TV show, indicating that she was the first mutant, you know, within the MCU itself. But now we're really going to start introducing a lot of the X-Men characters, obviously starting out with Wolverine. I imagine we're getting lots of cameos. We've seen that Cyclops will be a part of that and all that. So I imagine Marvel and Disney are getting all their plans together, all the things they've been working on with the X-Men since the Fox acquisition, getting the rights to X-Men movies and getting them into the MCU, and hopefully kickstarting this sumbitch, because the MCU is, quite frankly, in a very bad place. Mostly self-inflicted wounds. I think Kevin Feige has made a ton of poor decisions managing the MCU, moving it forward, but really moving it backwards all the way from phases 4 and 5, moving up to this Secret War supposed reboot that we're going to be getting, some type of relaunch, resetting of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to reintroduce the characters people actually like that they've killed off or aged out or whatever has happened. We've been hearing rumors about what's going on with the X-Men and what Kevin Feige wants to do with them at Marvel Studios, and they are absolutely terrible, proving that Disney has learned nothing from their own failures, despite the ongoing rejection of the tired girl boss narratives typical of recent media productions. A new rumor suggests that Marvel Studios is still hoping to center their upcoming X-Men film reboot on the team's female members. Word of Marvel's feminine creative intent for the MCU debut of their merry band of mutants was first raised to the public by noted scooper Daniel RPK Richmond. And we have certainly heard this rumor, you know, starting in 2023, and we'll kind of get into some of the more details about what this entails and what it would mean, and, you know, basically almost guessing what they could actually do within the framework of that they're saying here. But if you are a Marvel Studios executive and you want to make movies with the very best female superheroes Marvel Comics has to offer, you kind of need to go to the X-Men. Certainly there are other female heroes that are absolutely awesome. You got Sue Storm, you got Black Widow, you got some really cool female characters, but almost all the really awesome female characters are in X-Men. So I can understand when they get to X-Men, they're like, well, we want to highlight a lot of female characters, because you absolutely should. There have been female heroes on the X-Men since day one. There were lots of female heroes on the X-Men in Second Genesis, and there certainly are lots of female heroes in the New Mutants and Gen X, and whenever you're creating new heroes in the X-Men line, it's always a lot of female heroes, because female heroes are awesome. Certainly female mutant heroes are awesome. But I do think it's an enormous mistake and oversight to go, you know what? We need to make this a girl boss thing. We need to go girl-centric. This needs to be a girl team. But I do think it's negligence on the part of Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios to assume just because there are really good female characters in X-Men, that makes it a girls brand. We've seen what's happened with Star Wars. We've seen what's happening with the MCU. Just because there's really awesome female superheroes doesn't really mean you should exclude the male superheroes. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be making movies for the audience that actually wants to see the heroes, mostly men. Do I think their girlfriends will tag along? Yes. Do I think their wives will tag along? Yes. But I do believe they're going about this all the wrong way. You know, we've heard Bob Iger say, we're turning a new leaf. You know, we're going to go out there and we're going to try to entertain. It's not about the message anymore. And I've said, I'll believe it when I see it, Mr. Iger, and I don't believe I'm seeing it. And if these rumors do turn out to be true, and they are very prevalent, they've been around for quite some time, it will be another strike on Marvel Studios, and I don't think they can really handle many more at this point. In a December 18, 2023 post shared to his Patreon account, Daniel RPK Richmond alleged 3 new details regarding the X-Men's next cinematic outing: that Mr. Sinister would serve as its main villain, that Magneto would be left out of its cast, and that the film's plot would focus squarely on the various women who made up the ranks of the titular team. Now, in April of 2024, Richmond posted that not only was the studio still intent on having the film focus on those mutants of the fairer sex, but that they now also wanted it to both introduce characters who hadn't been in live action, as well as strike a thematic balance between drama and comedy. Because the MCU has been so successful introducing comedic aspects into their ranks. Certainly it was great in Guardians of the Galaxy, and there are a few good jokes to be had in some of those Avengers movies, but they probably have gone a little too far with the comedy. I'm talking about Thor Love and Thunder, I'm talking about Thor Ragnarok, I'm talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and the yuck fest of really terrible jokes. So I think that is a terrible idea, going more comedy or trying to strike a balance because they can't do it. You throw in a couple of jokes there that really fit the moment. Otherwise, just play it straight. Now, focusing on female X-Men heroes that haven't been in movies yet is going to be real hard. We basically have knocked out all the mainstays. We've already had Jean Grey, we've had Storm, we've had Rogue, we've even had Jubilee, we've had Emma Frost, we've had Mystique. Like, we've had the gamut of female heroes or female X-Men heroes in the Fox movies and their spin-off stuff like that. We've even had, like, Blink. Blink is not exactly like a big name character, but we've seen her. We've seen Magic and even Wolfsbane and some of the newer, younger female mutants, you know, within those Fox movies. There aren't enough characters left to probably do much with, and there would be no star power. I was trying to rack my brain, and I might be wrong about this, about the best known, most popular female X-Men characters that we haven't seen in live action, you know, specifically in movies. I don't believe we've seen Polaris, the daughter of Magneto. I don't think we've seen Armor. We haven't seen Penance, I think. I think she also goes by M. I can't remember. Hope Summers, but to do Hope Summers, like, you would have to have like Cable and Go to the Future and stuff like that. And maybe if you squint and turn your head, you know, maybe Sage would be a character that I don't think we've seen, but could be a big deal. Who else are we doing? We doing Marrow? Like, there just aren't very many of these characters left. And essentially none of them have any cachet for the most part, certainly with normies, or really even with X-Men fans and Marvel fans for the most part. Sure, there are people that like Polaris. Are there enough people that like Polaris to warrant a movie? Probably not. You know, you can associate it with Magneto or whatever, but this is supposedly not going to have Magneto in it. And once you start doing that, and then you have the Mistress of Magnetism instead of the Master of Magnetism, it starts feeling like the Eternals all over again, or Ironheart all over again, or Jane Foster Thor all over again, i.e. all the stuff that's been breaking the MCU in phases 4 and 5. And for the life of me, you know, racking my brain and like, I don't see it. We've already seen Psylocke. That's another character that would be good. We saw her in Age of Apocalypse. We've pretty much run the gamut of all the popular female X-Men characters at this point. And certainly we have the males as well. There's no denying that, but there's been a lot of Fox movies featuring X-Men characters. Like, there's over 10 at this point. Have fun with that, Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios, finding those diamonds in the rough female X-Men characters that you think are really going to blow up somewhere. You're going to grab Scout, Honey Badger, whatever the fuck you want to call her, Wolverine's other daughter? Like, we've already seen X-23. It's crazy that they would think that they could do this, because there just aren't, the characters are not available. They are not there. I mean, there's certainly 1,000 more female X-Men characters out there, but they don't have any great stories. They don't have star power. They have no name value. And I think this is playing from a position of weakness to kind of go into this direction. There are also rumors out there talking about Avengers Vs X-Men, which is one of the more notorious Marvel Comics events. You know, it's not quite Civil War II, but it ain't that far off either. It's really one of those big moments where you realize, fuck me, Brian Michael Bendis ain't got it anymore. He does not have any more good ideas, just terrible execution, but there is an enormous name value to Avengers Vs X-Men. You know, there's a reason that despite the event being terrible, it probably still made Marvel Comics some money. And rumors state Avengers Vs X-Men is happening in the MCU. It's not known when it will be set, other than it's stated to be taking place within the Multiverse Saga. Assuming Secret Wars is the last movie in the Multiverse Saga, that would mean Avengers Vs X-Men would need to be done by 2027. We can also add it won't be the Fox Marvel characters used, but the new MCU versions with new actors. It also sounds as if Avengers vs. X-Men will spin off from whatever goes leading into Secret Wars. Now, we do have a big black hole that is Avengers 5. It was supposed to be the Kang Dynasty. It might still be the Kang Dynasty. Replacing that with Avengers vs. X-Men is not the worst idea in the world. Like, there are far worse ideas, kind of like Kang Dynasty, to actually go with. The problem is you don't have a good Avengers vs. X-Men. Well, if you go with that event that's named that, really to go with, there are other times that the X-Men Avengers, you know, squared off and fought each other and whatnot, and that are better. They're not really any great ones out there, But that does have a lot of name cachet, and it would allow them to start introducing their MCU versions of the X-Men characters. I don't think that'll happen, but that's what the rumor is that it will happen before Secret Wars. If I were to do it and you said it has to go before Secret Wars, I would put it, into Avengers 5. It's the place that makes sense. But Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios are going to have a lot of pressure on them. They need to get these castings right. There are very few things that are going to pump new life into the MCU. X-Men casting will do that. Stating which X-Men stories that you're going to go back to and play out in the MCU in your own form or own way is something that will certainly breathe life into the MCU itself. Because the X-Men are much bigger than just comic books. They're cartoons, they're video games, they're backpacks. The X-Men are a brand unto themselves. So I am eager to find out what these X-Men castings could be, and I'll even be hopelessly optimistic that maybe Avengers vs. X-Men is good, as long as Miss Marvel isn't in it. Like, they've got to give up on that idea that Miss Marvel, Iman Vellani, Kamala Khan is a mutant and is going to be an X-Men. We're playing it out in comic books right now, and it is not going very well. This isn't a new rumor. This rumor has actually been around before Disney even bought Fox Studios, that they had plans that they wanted to do Avengers vs. X-Men. According to earlier reporting from the late Mike Sutton in 2015, to set up Avengers vs. X-Men, Magneto will be viewed as a big bad initially, but in the Secret Wars movie, Magneto will lead the charge against Doctor Doom, producing an epic fight between the two which will melt IMAX screens worldwide. It's said that Magneto, once an object of distrust, wins over the hearts and minds of the X-Men. It's claimed that Magneto, with the mutants at his side, except for Professor X and Wolverine, will set up Avengers vs. X-Men. So it sounds like even in 2015, they were already planning on making their way to Secret Wars. And at that time, if these rumors from the late Mikey Sutton are correct, they had already been planning out a Secret Wars and Avengers vs. X-Men, but Avengers vs. X-Men would follow that, with Magneto being a really big part of that. I don't know what the hard-on people have for Magneto is. He's homicidal. He's genocidal. He's basically the Sabu of the X-Men universe. I don't think we're supposed to root for that guy, although a lot of people did root for Sabu in ECW, so maybe it plays into that dark little piece of us where we want to root for the bad guy or something. But certainly Marvel Comics, and it sounds like Marvel Studios, even back in 2015, have had a major league hard-on for the Magneto character, thinking of him as an anti-hero rather than the absolute villain that he really is. I don't know what to make of all these rumors, but I do think we will eventually get an Avengers vs. X-Men movie. And I certainly believe, with all these rumblings and it playing into exactly what Disney and Marvel Studios have been doing for the last 3 or 4 years, that we will be getting far more female X-Men characters than male X-Men characters. Yes, we're still going to get Wolverine. They're not going to make an X-Men universe without him. But I don't know that we're going to get Colossus. Maybe we don't get Nightcrawler. Maybe we do get Cyclops, but we don't get a Banshee or an Iceman or any of the other really popular male characters out there, like a Beast, or maybe even Professor X isn't even there. Although that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, but nothing at Disney or Marvel Studios these days makes much sense. So I guess you just got to roll with the punches if you're still invested in the MCU. I'm not completely invested in the MCU, but I do check it out from time to time. It's been an exercise in frustration ever since Endgame, other than, Spider-Man No Way Home and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which was still enjoyable. But other than that, they really haven't produced much that was good. If you would like more coverage of the X-Men, whether it be movies or comic books, all that kind of stuff, cartoons, you do need to go over and check out Thinking Critical Patreon. We do a ton of comic book and pop culture-centric podcasts all throughout the week. Lots of new stuff going on there. 32 hours of new podcasts coming every single month, featuring your favorite guests like Aaron Sparrow and Doc and Jim and Nick Weiser, and obviously myself as well. If you haven't checked out the Patreon, it is the place to be, folks. There's a link in the video description.